The Villisca. Axe Murder House in Villisca, Iowa is a well-known tourist attraction for ghost hunters and horror lovers alike. The site of a gruesome unsolved 1912 murder, in which 6 children and 2 adults had their skulls completely crushed by the axe of an unknown perpetrator, was purchased in 1994, restored to its 1912 condition, and converted into a tourist destination. It costs $428 a night to stay at the old haunted home, where visitors always report strange paranormal experiences, such as visions of a man with an axe roaming the halls, or the faint screams of children. But in November of 2014, the haunting took a darker turn. Robert Stephen Lorson Jr., 37 of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, was on a regular recreational paranormal visit with friends when true horror struck. Per Vice. His companions found him stabbed in the chest, an apparently self-inflicted wound, called 911, and Lorson was brought to a nearby hospital before being helicoptered to Creighton University Medical Center in Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office said Lorson suffered the self-inflicted injury at about 12:45 a.m., which is around the same time the 1912 axe murders in the house began. Lorson recovered from his injuries, but has never spoken publicly about what occurred that day. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the home, the incident was very upsetting. It's publicity, but it's not exactly the kind of publicity you desire to have. I don't want people thinking that when they come to the Villisca Axe Murder House something's going to happen that's going to make them do something like that. The house remains open for tourist visits and overnight stays today. In 1973, a man in Enfield, Illinois told reporters that he saw a weird little creature lurking in his yard. Per the Mount Vernon Register-News, resident Henry McDaniel stated, "It had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights." The police later found scratches on the door screen and footprints that looked like a dog's, but with 6 toes. "If they do find it," McDaniel said in the newspaper, "they will find more than one and they won't be from this planet, I can tell you that." To this day, no explanation has ever been found. When you think of haunted dolls, it's likely the creepy old Victorian-looking porcelain kind that springs to mind, none of which you probably have laying around. Still, don't get too comfortable around any kids' toys too soon, though. A Disney's Frozen Elsa doll that was gifted for Christmas 2013 in the Houston area made headlines earlier this year when it seemingly became haunted. The doll recited phrases from the movie Frozen and sang "Let It Go" when a button on its necklace was pressed. For 2 years it did that in English, Mother Emily Madonia said. In 2015, it started doing it alternating between Spanish and English. There wasn't a button that changed these, it was just random. The family has owned the doll for more than 6 years and never changed its batteries. The mother says the doll would randomly begin to speak and sing, even with its switch turned off. The family decided to throw the creepy doll out in December of 2019. Weeks later, they found it inside a bench in their living room. The kids insisted they didn't put it there, and I believed them because they wouldn't have dug through the garbage outside. Every product was carefully curated by an Esquire editor. We may earn a commission from these links. Here's how we test products and why you should trust us. Horror movies can give a fright, but so can a good ghost story. Suspense is all about timing and gullibility, and if you can pull off both, you've got a hit. But what happens when the lines between fact and fiction start to blur? You often hear stories of people claiming that they've seen ghosts, aliens, and/or other supernatural beings. If you've turned on the local news, you've definitely heard about a grisly murder or two. Sometimes, it's a story even Stephen King couldn't dream of coming up with himself. That's when you start trusting in the strange. Once in a while, a story of a dreadful disappearance, demonic possession, or town full of devil worshippers will land in the local paper. Whether it's real or fiction, we often never find out. Maybe they're crazy, but maybe they're right. You be the judge. Below, we've rounded up the most unnerving real-life news tales below. In honor of spooky season, Here are 13 we can't stop thinking about. In 1973, a man in Enfield, Illinois told reporters that he saw a weird little creature lurking in his yard. Per the Mount Vernon Register-News, resident Henry McDaniel stated, "It had 3 legs on it, a short body, 2 little short arms, and 2 pink eyes as big as flashlights." The police later found scratches on the door screen and footprints that looked like a dog's but with 6 toes. "If they do find it," McDaniel said in the newspaper, "they will find more than one and they won't be from this planet, I can tell you that." To this day, no explanation has ever been found. In Colombia, the Hotel del Salto has more stories as one of the most haunted places on Earth, more than it does actual tenants. Turned into a museum, the hotel was designed by architect Carlos Arturo Tapias back in 1923, overlooking the Tequendama Falls. The views were said to be spectacular, but guests kept getting a little too close to the falls. Translated to Hotel of the Leap, the Hotel del Salto is full of stories of people leaping to their deaths. According to local legend, the indigenous Muisca tribe escaped from Spanish colonizers by leaping off the cliffs some centuries before. In August 2016 in North London, 26-year-old Kennedy Ife began acting strange and aggressive following a pain in his throat. He reportedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own penis, and complained of a python or snake inside of him before his family restrained him to a bed with cable ties and excessive force. The family then set about attempting to cure Kennedy through restraint and prayer over the next 3 days, the court was told. His brother, Colin Ife, told police, "It's clear that thing was in him, what we believed was a demon because it was not natural. It was clearly trying to kill him," he said. "We had to restrain him for himself. It was clear if we didn't restrain him, he could have tried to harm people in our family." Kennedy Ife had been bound to his bed for 3 days without medical attention when his brother called emergency services, explaining that Kennedy Ife was complaining of dehydration. He appeared to have developed breathing issues and was pronounced dead at 10:17 a.m. While police were at the house, Colin Ife allegedly carried out an attempted resurrection by chanting and praying for Mr. Ife. All 7 of Kennedy Ife's family members were accused of manslaughter, false imprisonment, and causing or allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. A post-mortem examination revealed over 60 wounds, including a possible bite on Kennedy Ife's body, and his father, Kenneth Ife, along with 4 of his brothers, sustained injuries as well. Kenneth Ife told jurors he ordered his sons to take shifts and use overwhelming force, but denied that an association with cults, occults, and secret societies played any part in the death. After a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were cleared of charges on March 14, 2019. Friends noticed that Danielle Harkins, a 35-year-old schoolteacher near St. Petersburg, Florida, started acting strangely in June of 2012, developing an interest in demonic rituals. Soon after, she was arrested for abuse of 7 of her former students. Danielle Harkins told the kids they needed to rid their bodies of demons as the group gathered before dusk Saturday, around a small fire near the St. Petersburg Pier. They should cut their skin to let the evil spirits out, police said, she told the children. Then they needed to burn the wounds to ensure that those spirits would not return. When Harkins held a lighter to one teen's hand, wind blew the flame out, police said. That prompted her to douse his hand in perfume before setting it on fire. The boy suffered second-degree burns, police said. Another teen was cut on the neck with a broken bottle, police said. Harkins used a flame to heat a small key, which she then used to cauterize the wound. The police were notified because a friend of one of the students who participated in the ritual raised alarms. However, none of the students themselves told their parents about the event or would comment following the arrest of Harkins for aggravated battery and child abuse. Investigators said they've spoken to Harkins, but she didn't spell out what type of religion would require such drastic measures. She hasn't informed us exactly what she was trying to accomplish with this, Poots Police Department said. When the Bretsuis family decided to insulate their home in Auburn, Pennsylvania in 2015, they discovered that it had already been, with scores of dead animal carcasses. The dead animals were wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s and 40s and were among half-used spices and other items. After removing the items, they sent hundreds of artifacts and carcasses to an expert in Kutztown. The expert attributed the rotting animals in their walls to powwow or Dutch magic, a ritual originating in the culture of the Pennsylvania Dutch to treat ailments and gain physical and spiritual protection. The Pennsylvania Dutch were a group of German-speaking settlers to Pennsylvania in the 1600s and 1700s, and are often of Lutheran, Mennonite, or Amish faiths. Many of the spells deal with the care of livestock, finding water, or the treatment of minor ailments, reflecting the conditions and concerns of early American settlers. But powwow also has within it a tradition of darker spells, and even of such things as conjuring demons. One notable ritual in their tradition is this hex to create loyalty in a dog. To attach a dog to a person, provided nothing else was used before to effect it. Try to draw some of your blood, and let the dog eat it along with his food, and he will stay with you. The mold found on the rotting carcasses in the Bretsuis' home has caused illness among the family members, and they say that the odor hasn't gone away. Answered a welfare check call one night late, between 2:30 on an elderly woman who lived next door to the caller and had not been seen for some time. This night we were having a bad thunderstorm without the rain. I get to the complainant's house to speak to her first, wondering why she called at this time. She tells me the lady next door is in her 90s old, lives alone, and she has not seen her in weeks. She explained that she has called, went over and knocked on her door, but the lady will not answer. I start thinking she is probably deceased and has been for some time. The car has a 3-inch layer of dust on it. The mail is piling up and no lights are on. First, I walk to the side door and knock on the door with my flashlight, knocking loud enough an elderly person with some hearing should hear it. After a few minutes of no response, I turn around and walk to the backyard looking at the windows and find everything okay. The complainant is with me and is saying she doesn't know of any relatives of the lady. I'm sure by now that she is probably deceased. I walk to the front of the house and notice that her blinds are up on the front windows and I can see a glow from inside. I am, however, not tall enough to look into the windows, which are probably 7 feet off the ground. The complainant runs next door and grabs a bucket for me to stand on. I get on the bucket and bingo, I can see the living room. The glow was from the TV, which was on a blue screen and is bright enough I didn't need my flashlight to see in. I looked first at the floor to make sure she had not fallen there. Couch, recliner, everything was empty. The telephone home base was blinking red with the missed calls and voicemails. From the living room was a hallway that was dark and I couldn't see down. Using my flashlight, I could only see an open door down the hall. Still no signs of life. I turned around and told the complainant that everything looked okay and nothing was disturbed. I turned back around and an elderly woman is looking back at me with her face right up next to the glass. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if I had been hit in the chest by a bat. I fell backward and off of the bucket. I hit the ground hard and the complainant rushed to me. I pushed her off as she was trying to help me up and I ran back up on the bucket. My heart was pounding, but I had to see. Instinct had my hand on my gun, the other was up on the window. I looked back inside and saw a frail elderly woman standing in the hallway wearing a long nightgown with her back to me. She turned her head to the side and looked at me out of the corner of her eye and slowly walked out of view and down the dark hallway. That unnerved me. I got down and looked at the complainant who was standing there with a puzzled look on her face. All I could say was, I saw her. By now the wind had picked up and it began to rain. I began to walk back to my car by the road and I turned back to the complainant and said, "Don't come back here." I got into the car and drove to the PD. I never found out about the lady who lived there. The complainant didn't call back and the house now has different tenants inside. Some things are better left alone.